Chapter 8, The Stakeout and the Souffle. The aftermath of Magnolia Dupree's visit left a lingering sense of solidarity in the diner. Jolene walked with a new subtle confidence her place in their patchwork family affirmed not in spite of her past, but because of it. For Vera, witnessing Jolene's struggle and triumph sparked a wave of domestic determination. She had her man, she had her home, and she was going to pour every ounce of her being into making their life a bastion of newlywed perfection. Her chosen battlefield was the kitchen. Vera, who had once considered boiling water a culinary risk, had thrown herself into the art of homemaking with the fervor of a convert. Their small apartment was filled with a sense of potpourri and experimental casseroles. Her current obsession in honor of their upcoming 6-month anniversary was the notoriously temperamental Grand Marnier souffle. For 2 weeks, their apartment became a laboratory of eggs, sugar, and disappointment. She produced a series of tragic, deflated, rubbery, and occasionally burnt creations. Elliot Ever, the supportive husband, dutifully ate every failed attempt, offering encouragement through mouthfuls of dense, orange-flavored scrambled eggs. "It's getting better, honey," he'd lie, his smile strained. But Vera was undeterred. This anniversary was going to be perfect, and the souffle was its fluffy, golden symbol. The day of the anniversary arrived a cloudless Arizona sky, mirroring Vera's optimistic mood. She spent the entire day in a state of blissful domesticity. She set the table with their wedding china, lit candles, and put on a romantic compilation of soft rock hits. By 6 o'clock, a magnificent, perfectly risen souffle sat cooling on the counter, a testament to her perseverance. The apartment was a perfect bubble of marital bliss, waiting only for its other half to arrive. 7 o'clock came and went, then 8. The souffle, with the cruel, inevitable physics of its kind, began to sigh, then shrink, collapsing in on itself like a dying star. Vera's cheerful smile followed suit. She called Elliot's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She called the precinct, but the desk sergeant was tight-lipped and unhelpful. "He's on assignment, ma'am. Can't say more." The romantic music on the stereo now sounded mocking. The candlelight flickered on a table set for two, one chair conspicuously empty. Worry, cold and sharp, began to pierce through her disappointment. This was the part of being a cop's wife they didn't show in the movies. The not knowing, the waiting, the silence that could mean anything from routine paperwork to mortal danger. In her distress, she did what she always did. She called Alice. Within the hour, Alice and Jolene were at her apartment, a rescue squad armed with a pint of ice cream and two very different perspectives. "He's probably just stuck in some boring meeting, honey." Vera sniffled, gesturing at the pathetic, shriveled souffle. "It was supposed to be so perfect." Vera, Jolene said, prying the lid off the ice cream with practiced efficiency. "Perfection is a myth like a fat-free donut. Life is messy. You knew you weren't marrying an accountant." Jolene's right, Alice added, gently putting an arm around Vera's slumped shoulders. "It's okay to be disappointed, but you can't let your happiness depend on a plan going exactly the way you imagined. Especially not with Elliot's job." She spoke from a place of deep experience her life, a long improvised melody of adjusted expectations and resilient hope. Meanwhile, across town, Elliot was anything but comfortable. He was crammed into the passenger seat of an unmarked sedan, his legs aching, staring through a pair of binoculars at a derelict warehouse. His world was a cramped, stale-smelling bubble of boredom, punctuated by moments of high-stakes tension. His anniversary dinner consisted of a lukewarm cup of coffee from a thermos and a crushed bag of pretzels. "You know, my wife's making a souffle tonight," he'd mumbled to his partner, a grizzled veteran named Mac. Mac grunted, not taking his eyes off the warehouse. "My ex-wife used to make souffles. Looked great for about 5 minutes, then they were all empty promises, kind of like her." Elliot felt a fresh pang of guilt. He had tried to call Vera during a brief lull, but the call wouldn't go through in their dead zone location. He hated this. He hated the worry he knew he was causing her. Hated that the two most important parts of his life, his duty to the city and his love for his wife, were in such direct conflict. Back at the apartment, Alice and Jolene managed to coax Vera out of her despair, transforming the wake for the dead souffle into an impromptu girls' night. They ate the fancy anniversary dinner themselves, offered brutally honest critiques of the soft rock playlist, and shared stories of their own romantic disasters. By the time they left, Vera was still lonely, but she no longer felt entirely alone. It was nearly 3 in the morning when Elliot finally unlocked the apartment door. He was bone-tired, unshaven, and smelled of stale coffee and adrenaline. The stakeout had been a success, the bus clean. But there was no triumph in his posture. He stepped inside to a scene of quiet devastation. The candles had burned down to puddles of wax. On the counter, the sad, sunken souffle sat in its ramekin like a monument to a failed celebration. And on the sofa, curled up under a blanket, was Vera, fast asleep. He stood there for a long moment, the weight of his guilt and the exhaustion of the past 12 hours pressing down on him. This wasn't the life he wanted for her. He gently touched her shoulder. Vera, her eyes fluttered open, filled with sleep and confusion, which quickly cleared into a complex mixture of relief, anger, and hurt. "I'm so sorry, honey," he whispered, sitting on the edge of the coffee table. "We were in a communications dead zone. I couldn't call. He was expecting tears, maybe even a fight. But Vera just looked at him, at his weary face, and the dirt smudged on his cheek. "I was so scared, Elliot," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's not the dinner. It's not the souffle. It's the not knowing. I just sat here for hours imagining the worst." It was the honest, vulnerable confession he needed to hear. He pulled her into his arms, burying his face in her hair. "I know," he said. "I hate it. I hate putting you through it." They didn't solve everything that night. There was no magic wand to wave away the realities of his job. But they really talked for the first time about the hard parts. They talked about fear and expectations, about the chasm between the life they dreamed of and the one they were actually living. The next evening, they redid their anniversary. There was no china, no candles. They ordered a large pepperoni pizza and ate it sitting on the living room floor. Later on, a whim, Vera decided to try the souffle again. She whisked and folded with a newfound lightness, freed from the tyranny of perfection. As they watched through the oven door, it rose magnificently, and then just as she pulled it out, it puckered, sighed, and collapsed. Elliot looked at the sunken pastry, then at Vera. She looked back at him, and a small giggle escaped her lips. Soon they were both laughing, a deep, cleansing laughter that filled the small apartment. The souffle was a failure, but their evening was perfect. Marriage, Vera was beginning to understand, wasn't about a dish that stayed perfectly risen. It was about finding the person who would laugh with you when it all came tumbling down. Chapter 9, The Golden Pancake. The comfortable rhythm that had settled over Mel's diner was, like all good things, destined to be disrupted. The threat this time wasn't internal or emotional. It was a gleaming corporate behemoth taking shape directly across the street. For weeks they had watched the construction with a detached curiosity, speculating on what it might be. An office supply store, another bank. The reality unveiled on a massive, cheerful billboard was far worse. It was to be the newest location of the Golden Pancake, a relentlessly sunny, hyper-efficient national breakfast and lunch chain. The Golden Pancake was the antithesis of Mel's Diner. Where Mel's was worn, the Golden Pancake was brand new. Where Mel's boots had the comfortable patina of age and a few rips patched with duct tape, the Golden Pancakes were a vibrant, unblemished orange. Their waitstaff wore uniforms with crisp aprons and matching caps, a stark contrast to the comfortable, non-uniform attire of Alice, Vera, and Jolene. Their arrival was announced with a blizzard of flyers, coupons, and a grand opening celebration featuring a man in a terrifyingly cheerful pancake costume. Initially, Mel was dismissive. A pancake palace, he scoffed, flipping a burger with extra vigor. "This is a chili town. They'll be out of business in 6 months. People want character, not corporate griddle cakes." But people, it turned out, were also quite fond of novelty, cleanliness, and a 10% off coupon. The first week, the Golden Pancake was open business at Mel's dropped by a quarter. The second week, it was a third. The familiar faces of some of their less loyal regulars started to disappear, only to be spotted later through the large, pristine windows across the street. The diner, once a bustling hub of conversation and clattering plates, grew quiet. The silence was unnerving. Mel's dismissiveness curdled into a foul mood of rage and denial. He saw the competition not as a business challenge, but as a personal insult. He refused to acknowledge the threat, instead blaming his staff for the downturn. "Are you girls smiling enough?" he'd demand. Maybe your aprons aren't clean enough. That place looks clean. We need to look cleaner. The girls who saw the problem with perfect clarity tried to reason with him. Mel, we can't compete with them on shiny and new, Alice said calmly during a tense, empty afternoon. We have to compete on what we do best, us, the community. The fact that we know our customers' names and how they like their coffee. Tommy said we should start a social media page, Vera offered timidly. He said we could post pictures of the daily special. Mel looked at her as if she'd suggested they start serving food in alien language packaging. A what page for the who now? This is a diner, not a computer club. The way we've always done things has worked for 20 years. But the world is changing. Mel Jolene shot back her patience, wearing thin. That pancake place is a machine. We're a family. We need to start acting like it and fighting back. But Mel wouldn't listen. His pride was a fortress. He retreated into a flurry of ill-conceived reactionary tactics. He tried to create a gourmet brunch menu featuring a disastrous chili Benedict that was sent back by the one customer brave enough to order it. He bought a cheap tinny sound system and started piping in elevator music to create ambiance, a move that only made the diner's emptiness feel more cavernous. The emotional heart of the diner, their core group of regulars, became the contested territory. Henry thankfully remained steadfastly loyal. He became their unofficial scout, making occasional forays into enemy territory. "The coffee's decent, Mel," he reported one morning, leaning over the counter conspiratorially. "But it's served by a teenager who calls everyone folks and doesn't know the first thing about a good conversation. The pancakes are fluffy, I'll give them that, but they taste of nothing. Like eating a cloud." This small validation was a comfort, but it didn't pay the bills. The breaking point arrived on what should have been a bustling Friday night. The Golden Pancake across the street was lit up like a beacon, its parking lot full. At Mel's, there were 3 occupied tables. The silence was so profound they could hear the hum of the ancient refrigerator. Alice found Mel standing by the front window staring at the competition. His usual bluster was gone, replaced by a quiet, raw defeat. His shoulders were slumped. In that moment, he didn't look like a tyrannical boss. He just looked like a man watching his life's work crumble. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't offer a quick, easy solution. She simply pulled up a stool beside him. "You know," she began softly, "I remember my first week working here. I was so broke and scared. Tommy was just a little kid. I spilled a whole tray of coffee on a customer, and I was sure you were going to fire me." Mel grunted, but kept his eyes on the window. "You didn't," she continued. "You yelled, of course, for about 10 minutes. Then you handed me a fresh pot of coffee and a clean rag and said, 'Well, the floor's clean. Now go take their order again.' You gave me a chance when no one else would. This place, this isn't just a diner, Mel. For a lot of us, it's the place that gave us a chance." He was silent for a long time, the reflection of the glowing golden pancake sign flickering in his eyes. Finally, he turned to her, his own eyes, surprisingly moist. "I don't know what to do, Alice," he admitted, the words heavy with the weight of his surrendered pride. "I really don't.